I think Venezuela is avoiding the ICJ route while Guyana is basically saying, let's take it to court. Well,
Exactly.
actually, it's the UN Secretary General, I think, that had recommended them going that route.
Right.
But in any case,
Right, right. So, I think that's a good thing to come out of CARICOM, to see that Belize got its individual attention in its issue.
yep. And so, well, they also supported the OAS office in the adjacency zone. So that's another thing on that. And then another thing that was being highlighted from the international scene was the U.S., well, under the presidency of Donald Trump, cutting funding for the climate change center.
Yes.
I think my understanding was that this doesn't directly affect us here. It's more
Right.
the
That's also my
yeah,
understanding. Yes.
the Eastern Caribbean states. But it just shows the new policy position that's being taken by the US. I mean, when you pull out of the Paris Agreement, a lot of people were saying, well, this is kind of expected. We saw this coming.
Right, right. And what a shift it is, because the 5Cs, the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, has enjoyed quite a bit of support from several foreign governments because of the important role it plays in the climate change research and so on.
Yeah.
But of course, with the US's policy and approach to climate change at this point in time, that has started to affect, in general, what the Caribbean can do in studying and researching.
But you see, this is a situation of he who feels it knows it, right? Because in one of the articles, I think it's from the New Yorker, I took interest in the caption underneath the photo that was in it, where, and I'll quote it from here, it says, the poorest countries in the world, including those in the Caribbean, emit 1/5 of global carbon emissions, yet they are most susceptible to the effects of climate change.
Exactly.
We're the guys, the developing countries and all these guys who are, we are not as industrialized, and we're not doing all of these emissions to the degree that developed partners are doing.
That's true.
But the ramifications come to us. The sea level rising affects Caribbean countries.
And we have to remember how everything can be interconnected. So while funding can be cut from the Climate Change Center, what you're having at the same time in the United States, for example, is some focus on getting back into coal, the coal industry, focus on running oil pipelines. And so these things actually have further effects on the natural environment, and therefore will have effects on climate change in general as well. But the US has felt some of the effects of climate change as well, but I don't know that there has been that connection yet, which is why the research that's funded through centers like these is very important, because it puts the discourse out there, it puts the evidentiary proof out there. But we just have to see how this will develop over the next few years.
But it's strange, because my understanding is that either it's 97% or 99%, but I think it's 97%. Scientists in the world are saying that climate change is human caused climate change is a thing.
Right.
Is real. And the minority are saying otherwise. But you're seeing policy decisions being made with the minority. I just find
it's just really what's influencing those policy decisions,
And then talking about bringing back coal jobs in our friend to the north, I mean, I won't get into an extensive bit on U.S. commentary, but renewable energy is the way to go.
It is.
And that's where the jobs are and everything going.
And the technology and the innovation and that sort of thing, it's there. And so, it's unfortunate. There was a comment that, they were expecting it. So I'm hoping that things were put in place, or that even other countries who have seen the pull from the U.S. will double and triple their support to try to fill that void.
But in the theme of talking about that, I mean, the Chamber is working along with the IDB on a project which is looking at climate resilience anyway. And one of the things that's coming up as a theme throughout the region, I noticed, is where you're starting to build in climate change resilience into your buildings, really, your building processes. Because every time there's a storm, there's obviously a cost that comes with it. You lose, some industries are impacted, some of them not so bad, some of them they probably never really recover.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still hearing coming out of SIB talking about we're still recovering from some of the last storms that happened
right.
in previous years.
And we're now in another hurricane season.
Yeah. So then we have to start looking at ways, and this is the narrative now where business resilience is coming in, where how do we prepare and prep our businesses so that the impact is not as hard.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't dodge everything, but how do you make it in such a way?
That
to mitigate it.
Yeah.
So because every time you have to go and almost restart the engine for certain industries or certain businesses. I mean, it's a cost. It's a haircut. Trying to plan ahead and be a little bit more proactive.
Right.
So climate change is definitely a discussion, and I think we did the show where we look at the environmental aspect of the GSDS, and I think there's much more to expand on that, because we cannot play ostrich and put our heads in the sand and pretend that is not happening.
It doesn't exist, right?
That might be good for some other country to do, but that's not in our best interest.
Exactly.
So that in any case, aside from that, coming out of the heads of government again, we see where once again statements are made regarding Cuba.
Yes.
In terms of reigniting the strengthening the relationship with Cuba and trade facilitation, and they also a call on the United States government in terms of going back to what Obama was trying to do in terms of normalizing that relationship.
Right.
We saw 180 with that.
Yeah. Once again, another 180.
Right.
And so, I think the relationship with CARICOM and Cuba has always been a special one. And I see the effort in this heads of government meeting to include Cuba and also Haiti. There were some extensive talks on Haiti during that meeting as well. And really, they've looked at the need to increase the trade and economic relations. But one of the unique things that I saw coming out of this that I actually liked was the importance of increasing bilingualism among the youth. I thought that was good as well, because even in Jamaica, for example, there has been a push to having a second language, that it's required in schools that you study.
But we don't talk two languages already, man. Creole and English.
Okay, when they declare Creole a language, then we can say that, right? But I mean, for us in Belize, it might not seem to be such a big thing, because by default, because of our surroundings and so on, we have so much infiltration of the Spanish culture, the language, and so on, that it's almost natural for us. We should probably just declare it a second language for us, because it's already so prominent. But, those sorts of things will not only advance the English-speaking Caribbean, but it will also advance exactly what they're trying to do here, the relations between Cuba and other Spanish-speaking countries that the Caribbean does business with, or the CARICOM nations do business with, like the Dominican Republic. And so, I think that it's going to, the facilitation of better relationships and so on is definitely going to be beneficial to the region overall.
And on the last point coming out of regional CARICOM conversation, talking about better relationship, we're seeing where there is now, again, agreement to fast track the implementation of CSME, the Caribbean CARICOM Single Market and Economy. Now, the Jamaican government had recently had a review done, questioning whether or not they should be
stick around. There was I don't even know what you call that one, because they had Brexit. I don't know if you call it Jackzit.
Somebody called, I thought referenced somewhere Jamzit or something, JAMXIT or something like that.
We would hope that wouldn't be the case. I mean,
the study came out saying that they should stick with it under certain conditions.
And I commend that. I think that instead of just jumping ship, trying to repair the ship, make it float, make it more efficient, is actually the better way to go.
Yeah. So I think, this was headed by Mr. Holness, and so it said that Jamaica's Prime Minister, along with others, are pushing that they give urgency to the process. And some of the things that they're listing is that they include an investment policy and investment code. They're looking at incentive regime and integrated capital market and securities legislation. That I mean, we don't have time for that on the show today, but I mean, that in itself is a
big,
mouthful.
yeah.
So I think definitely we probably might have to bring on some folks, probably from the Ministry of Trade, to discuss some of these with us.
I think they actually signed a protocol during this meeting that had to do with families of CARICOM skilled workers.
Yes, you're correct.
So who, once a skilled worker has gotten a job in another, the spouse, the kids, and so on, have special protections and access to social services in that new country. That's a huge step.
I think, soon enough, people in our country and around the region have to understand that you're not competing with just your domestic folks. Really, you're as a whole region now that you kind of have to keep up with. But in any case, like I said, that is something we definitely have to bring. This is a whole conversation by itself,
and an important one,
Right? So we won't even pretend to cover that in a minute. And speaking of time, we're at the top of the hour for 7. And when we come back after this break, we shall be joined by Mr. Singh, again talking about CETO and e-governance.